The World Without Visas, Around the World with Valery Shanin. The trip to Nepal became the next stage of the project, The World Without Visas, within which Valery Shanin travels only around the countries, visa-free for Russians. Mainul Klemantieva became his fellow traveler on this trip. Nepal, Manaslu Circuit Trek. The main goal of this trip was to walk the path along the tourist trail around Manaslu. It is one of the most beautiful and still not too walked tourist routes of Nepal. The trail climbs the gorge of the river of the Buri Gandaki over the pass of Larkya at the altitude of 5,135 meters and then goes down along the Marsyandi river. This region of Nepal is located on the border with Tibet, and for a long time it was closed for foreigners. The trail around Manaslu was open only in 1992, rather to say, conditionally open. You can only come here accompanied by a certified guide working with foreigners. Trekking around Manaslu is not conventional pedestrian tourism. It's not what we are used to. It's a long foot walk with light baggage. It is not permitted to go on the trail without a guide. You can resent and protest, but it is better to relax and enjoy the process. Into the narrow gorge, cutting the main Himalaya ridge. We will continue along it until the pass of Larkya. The path quickly goes higher and higher. Here on the fields, they don't grow rice anymore, but millet. On the way, we pass through small villages, majestic entrance gate, and 2-3 houses made of raw stones. There is not a lot of fertile soil here. Farmers have to work tirelessly in order to provide food to their families. It is getting cooler in the morning. In the village of Tatopani, the first snow top appeared in the vicinity zone. It will become a landmark for the following several days. It's so heavy. How many kilograms? About 70. The villages are small here. There is nowhere to go. There is no space for the fields, and the road was not made yet. Slightly higher, on flatter hills, the vaster fields start appearing, and apple orchards. The progress hasn't reached here. The technology of farming practically hasn't changed for the last several hundred years. It is all because there is no actual roads. And how much can be carried on a donkey's back? The village of Navarone, located at the altitude of 2,540 meters, is almost a city by local standards. They even have side streets, not just the central. There are both stupas and monasteries here. Here, the cows and horses are getting replaced by yaks. Their only look scares you at first, but actually these animals are extremely timid. In the rocky Nepalese village, the tallest and the most majestic construction, the entrance gate. They are usually made out of stones, similar to the rest of the houses. However, they have several floors clustered and decorated with multicolored flags, with Buddhist mantras on them. We are entering the area of Kutang or Low Nubri. For the first time, in a visibility range, the mountain of Manaslu appears. The village of Samaro, or Samagaon, lies at the foot of Manaslu mountain. We are already at the height of 3,390 meters above sea level. It is known that at the altitudes of over 3 kilometers, the symptoms of mountain sickness may occur. It is difficult to cure the mountain sickness, but it can be prevented. The best prophylactic, a gradual acclimatization. Not to continue higher and higher, but to stop ascending at least for one day. If you can't go up, it doesn't mean that you need to stay at one place. It is fairly cold in the mornings. The water in the puddle freezes. Hoarfrost covers the ground. As soon as the sun rises over the surrounding mountains, it quickly gets warmer. The village of Samagaon is rather small. People live in primitive dwellings made out of stones. The inside walls are black, darkened by the smoke. They don't make windows not to let the heat out. They live poorly. They all work, from children to old men. The grain collected on neighboring fields is milled in flour on water mills. Higher. The sun is not high yet, but we won't continue farther today. Acclimatization continues. We won't hurry. The village of Samdo, the last settlement on the way to the pass of Larkya. They live poorly here. The houses are still black, smoked by the fire. They don't study in classrooms, they don't exist here, but directly under the The Arctic landscape is replaced by the dense wood with huge oaks, pines and firs. The Marsyandi river rustles beside. We ought to go along it. In the village of Darapani, the Marsyandi river merges with the docked Kola river, and the trail around Manaslu crosses with another more popular and busier trail around Annapurna. We are meeting heaps of tourists on our way. They even paved the path here. The laziest and most impatient can take a ride instead of walking, although not at ease. It is necessary to cross by wading streamlets and small rivers and keep away from the waterfalls. At last, the trail leaves the highway. Over the suspended bridge, we cross to the eastern bank of the Kola river. There is no road going to the village of Tal, but technical progress has reached here too, and there are many more tourists here than locals. Our trip around Manaslu is coming to an end. It is our last trekking day. With each step we are descending lower and lower. The snow and the autumn landscapes are getting replaced by tropical flowers. There aren't just many tourists on the trail, there are too many. There are no Russians, but we meet Russian-speaking foreigners. The donkeys are yet used for their sole purpose, and the porters are also not rare here. But on this trail they already look out of place, and soon, for sure, will be completely replaced by transport. The trail goes on, but it makes no sense to walk further by foot. We will use the occasion too. We will go back to Pokhara by bus. The campaign on the Manaslu trail is completed. But before returning home, it is worth examining Khatmandu and several nearby ancient towns. Without it, the idea of Nepal would be unilateral. Nepal is not only mountains and small villages, it is a country with an ancient culture and a centuries-old history. Kathmandu, the capital of Nepal, here is the only international airport of the country. Therefore, the acquaintance of foreigners with Nepal begins with this city. The main square is located in the center of the old town. This area is built up with palaces, temples, Buddhist stupas, pagodas, and picturesque Hindu sanctuaries. Here there is a concentration of Buddhist pagodas and Hindu temples. The love, inherent in Buddhists to all living beings, has led to the fact that here there is a large number of pigeons. Buddhists feed them to improve their own karma. And following the Hindus, sacred cows have came here. As a result, the main square of the million-people megalopolis looks like a rural village. Life flows slowly. And sometimes it completely freezes, and only tourists run from place to place, trying to see and photograph everything. From every available angle. From down, from the side, from above. Three kilometers west of the center of Kathmandu, either in town or in its vicinity, a large stupa was set on the top of the hill. You can only climb barefoot. How else? It is a sacred place. Not only the stupa is sacred, but the entire hill is, from the bottom to the top. Svayambudnatkh, a Buddhist stupa. But in Nepal, mainly a Hindu state, all Buddhist sacred places are in combination with the Hindu ones. Any stupa always has Hindu sanctuaries, temples and altars. And the stupa is an embodiment, not inherent in Buddhists, of simplicity, but the Hindu tendency to magnificent decorations. The large pair of eyes is drawn on each side, which is purely related to Hinduism. There are so many people who want to do sacrifices that they have to organize them. Only the monkeys enjoy their freedom. Nobody orders them what to do. This is why this stupa is called by locals Monkey Stupa. The stupa Bodnatkh is in the center of the Tibetan area. Around it live the Tibetan refugees. There are Buddhist monasteries and temples. There is also a Buddhist university here. The stupa is not just a huge cult construction, but a symbolical reflection of the Buddhist ideas on the structure of the universe. The basis of a stupa symbolizes the earth, its hemispherical arch, water, a gilded spike of 13 steps, fire, an umbrella, air, and the spike crowning a stupa, heavenly ether. The central stupa is surrounded by smaller ones, a Buddha statue and deities of the Tibetan Buddhist sect, Nyingma, Tibetan prayer wheels and altars. Pilgrims go around the stupa, exclusively clockwise. 4-story buildings stuck closely to each other with shops, souvenir shops, restaurants and cafes create a peculiar wall around the stupa. The ancient city of Bhaktapur, known also as Bkatgaon and Kvopa, is on the riverbank to Anumatya, 16 kilometers to the east of Khatmandu. From the 12th up to the 15th century, Bhaktapur was the capital of the Kathmandu Valley. Here you can still feel like in the times of the Middle Ages. The haste of Kathmandu cannot be found here. Life is very slow and gradual. Here there are temples and museums. All life of local residents happens in the streets and squares. In general, the atmosphere is unlike cities, but mostly rural. The square in front of the building of the royal palace in Bhaktapur, by its appearance, is surprisingly similar to Durbar Square in Kathmandu. However, it is much cleaner than the one in the capital. In 1934, many temples have been destroyed by an earthquake. Only a small part of them have been restored. The highest temple of Bhaktapur is not on Durbar Square, But a little further, at Tomatki Tola Square, this 5-level pagoda is devoted to the goddess Siddhi Lakshmi. Temples, stupas and sanctuaries are on every city square, but the squares are not only used for religious ceremonies. On the hilltop, only 5 kilometers from Bhaktapur, the oldest temple of Kathmandu Valley has remained. The temple of Changu Narayan is devoted to Narayana. This is how they call the Hindu god Vishnu. In the 18th century, the initial temple almost completely burned down. Now we can only see a replica, even if it is strongly similar to the original. Patan, the oldest village in the Kathmandu Valley, from the 15th to the 18th century, it was the capital of the independent kingdom. But then it lost its independence. At the end of the 20th century, Patan has merged with Khatmandu to become one megalopolis. But nevertheless, life here still flows more slowly and more quietly than in the center of the capital of Nepal. The formal border between Khatmandu and Patan is the sacred river of Bagmati, but from the old center of Kathmandu, it is possible to reach here by a regular city bus. The trip to Nepal comes to an end, and the World Without Visas project continues. Ahead, new travels over the countries, visa-free for Russians.